Good afternoon all. I welcome all for today's National Distance Learning Seminar. Today we are going to discuss on issues and challenges in management of adolescents with HIV infection, and presenter is Dr. Anju Seth. Dr. Anju Seth is currently working as Director, Professor of Pediatrics and Program Director for Pediatric Center of Excellences in HIV Care at Kalavati Charan Children's Hospital, New Delhi. She is a member of Technical Resource Group for Pediatric HIV, PPTCT, ICTCT, ICTC NACO, and Master Trainer for Training Program in HIV Care. She is also the core committee member for development of curriculum for Diploma in HIV Medicine, IGNO. She has been a member of many NACO constituted expert groups, including expert group of development of nutritional guidelines for HIV exposed and infected infants and children, expert group for revision of pediatric HIV guidelines, and working group for cash support treatment, and also ARV quantification and forecasting for NACP4. She was a core committee member for development of nutritional counseling module for adults and children with HIV. Now I request Dr. Anju Seth to take over the session. Thank you.
To speak about a topic which has not, to the best of my knowledge, never been taken up as a session on NDLS series, but it's a subject that has been assuming increased significance over the last few years, and I feel the time is ripe to discuss this issue today with you. So the objectives of this session today would be to highlight that adolescents with HIV are an emerging population that face challenges both of adolescence and HIV infection, to describe two distinct populations of AL-HIV, describe the challenges faced by these two distinct populations of AL-HIV, and to discuss possible solutions to these. Over last few years, maybe a decade or so, we have realized that adolescents with HIV are actually a newly emerging population. Till there was universal access to antiretroviral therapy, most of the children who were perinatally infected with HIV would not reach adolescence. So, but right now, because of the fact majorly the fact that there is a large scale free availability of antiretroviral therapy that has led to increased life expectancy, and thus we are now seeing emergence of this new population, that is adolescents with HIV. The other two factors that have also contributed to, in addition to availability of ART, is availability of early infant diagnosis, whereby we are able to catch these children early and begin ART early. This group is well aware that delay in starting ART was a major factor for increased mortality of HIV infected infants. Also, over time, the physician sensitive, they know now the clinical clues that could indicate HIV infection in a child, and they are increasingly picking up HIV infection in a symptomatic child. Therefore, we are capturing more children. We have now smooth protocols for their, very well defined protocols for their management and availability of ART, and therefore these children who were never reaching adolescence are increasingly reaching adolescence. So currently there are about 0.24 million adolescents with HIV in India. That constitutes about 19% of total population with HIV. But one can understand that this data is actually very difficult to access, and there is very scanty information on adolescents with HIV not only in India but also in most parts of the world. The data is actually submerged under various groups, and see, you all might recall that adolescent age group begins from 10 years and goes on till 18 years, whereas under NACO guidelines we under NACO guidelines we have a cutoff of 15 years. So children up to 15 years are considered as pediatric, and beyond that are taken as adults. So our data goes like that. Adolescence cuts across this 15-year margin. So to have a data of 10 to 18 years, we don't really have a combined data. And we really have not much information as of now on the characteristics of this group in India. What is their mode of transmission and many other factors. So just sharing with you what the mode of transmission of adolescents in, at my center, that is Kalavati Saran Children's Hospital in New Delhi, are 67% of all the cases, when we analyzed 262 cases, and the data is updated till December 2015. So 67% of the cases were still through mother to child transmission, and these are the children who have now survived and grown into their adolescence. Another 10% are the ones who had received a single BT, 4% are thalassemia, multi-transfused children, and there is a whole chunk of 14% where we do not know what is going on. So what is the mode of transmission is not known. This is a group where parents are negative, where no blood transfusion is reported, and so it's very difficult to say what has gone on. So this group is a difficult group to deal with, and it actually combines the challenges of adolescence as well as challenges of HIV infection. Adolescence age group is a transitory phase between childhood and adulthood. That's a time when a lot of not only physical but emotional and mental changes are taking place in the adolescent. There is a need for autonomy and independence. That's the time they start questioning decisions taken by others, especially their parents. There's a new cognitive capacity, so they're able to think about themselves and their future. They get concerned about their future. There is an evolving decisional capacity, so they want to be part of decisions that affect them. There is a struggle for independence, therefore they don't take any instructions lying down. Everything that they're asked has to be reasoned out with them. And they do tend to question authority, so whether it is parents or doctors. So it becomes a little tricky dealing with this group, adolescents as a group. In fact, most of, if you talk to the parents, they find this age group very, very difficult to handle. And doctors, both, most physicians and I would say many pediatricians often find it difficult to deal with this age group. In addition, there is a strong need to identify with peers. So they want to do what everybody else is doing. And there is a preoccupation with self-image. And there is also a tendency for risk-taking behavior. So these are the characteristics of adolescence. And just think, when these characteristics apply to a child with HIV infection, all of them, risk-taking behavior, preoccupation with self-image, questioning authority, everything assumes a lot of significance and an additional dimension to it. So risk-taking behavior, using that, they might put their other people with whom they might initiate into sexual activity, they might put them at risk. Preoccupation with self-image might be additional source of stress to them, because they are most of, as we'll discuss later, the growth and development issues of adolescents with HIV might lead to short stature. Some of the drugs have been associated with lipodystrophy. Thus, if it affects their looks, it's an additional source of stress for them. And certainly this is the time when they start questioning authority, and then this is the time when they start thinking about their illness. So challenges of adolescence per se are important, and they assume a lot of significance in this age group. In addition, challenges of having HIV, which is a chronic disease, which has actually life-modifying implications. This is a disease that requires daily medication. This is a disease for which there is no cure, and the treatment is associated with its own problems. There might be long-term morbidities related to both HIV itself and its treatment. And often these children have adverse socio-economic circumstances. They also learn how to deal with the HIV-associated stigma. That's a big problem which they become more and more, they need to face that as they grow older. And then this is a very heterozygous kind of a group. There is disparity in the population characteristics. And as a physician and as a counselor dealing with them, we need to be aware they come from different type of background. Some of them may be educated and affluent, others may be poor or uneducated. So we need to be aware of disparities in population characteristics, which again adds to the challenges. So this group is a challenging group to manage. So let's just look at this case. Manoj is a 14-year-old child who is on antiretroviral therapy and is regularly attending ART center since the age of 4 years. His father expired when he was an infant and mother is on ART from the same center. She is now keeping very sick and not able to go for work. There is no family support and Manoj is now finding it difficult to go to school. He does not know his diagnosis or what it means for his family. He cannot understand why their relatives and neighbors are not willing to help them. He is increasingly irritable. His drug adherence has started faltering. I am reasonably certain that many of you might have faced this or some variation thereof, this situation in adolescence. So there are multiple challenges in managing a child with these problems. If we just try and look at his problems, see, here is a child who is adolescent. He is on antiretroviral therapy, likely to be having perinatal infection. He would have issues with his own. When his friends are growing up, it is likely that he is short and is having a delayed puberty. He is a single orphan. His father has expired. So he has a mother on whom he has been dependent, and here is a family that has been isolated from the other people, family and neighbors who want to keep away from them. And not the same mother who was a sole anchor for Manoj is very sick herself. So not only is Manoj losing the sole emotional anchor that he had, there are financial issues as well because she is now not able to earn, and there is nobody to support them. And on top of that, Manoj does not even know what is ailing him, what is ailing his mother. And it is, believe me, it is not unusual for 14-year-olds in our country not to know about their status. And he does not know what is the problem, why his father has died, why his mother is very sick, and why their family has totally isolated them. He has all the reasons to be irritable, and that how it manifests as faltering in his own drug adherence. So managing this child is not going to be very easy, and there are no easy solutions around this problem also. But just be aware of the issues that are surrounding these, and a skilled counselor should be able to bring out these issues when you assess the family. Just look at another case scenario now. This is a totally different case. Kumar is a 16-year-old boy who had unprotected sex on several occasions and is now very worried about having acquired HIV. He comes to a government hospital because he wants to have a HIV test. He does not know whom to approach and where to go. There is no one accompanying him. So we are again here talking about another adolescent, but very different from the previous one. The previous one was a 14-year-old boy who probably had perinatal HIV and is already facing the problems associated with a long-term chronic disease while being on ART. Here is instead another adolescent who may or may not have acquired HIV, but is definitely vulnerable to have HIV, and he is aware at least of there is something called HIV. He has come to a hospital for testing, but you can imagine how lost one can get in a government hospital. We don't have proper signages, there are not enough people to guide him, and he might be very timid. You as a young child and coming for something which is viewed as a stigma itself, coming for HIV testing, it requires a lot of guts for a 16-year-old boy to do that, and he might be very, very hesitant. And on top of that, but at the same time, look how afraid he might be, what all might be going on in his mind, that he might have acquired infection, and he would have some incomplete half-baked knowledge on the basis of which he would really be stressed, and there is nobody to clarify issues for him and nobody to tell him what to do. And now if such a person reaches the VCTC counselor, the counselor again, most of them would have no idea how to deal with him. The biggest problem is his 16-year-old. Can you do a test for a 16-year-old? Our system doesn't allow us to test a 16-year-old without a parent being present and without parental consent. And if Kumar is asked to go and bring back your parent, do you think he'll ever come back to you? He has mustered enough courage to come to you for a testing. You tell him you go and tell your parents and bring your parents. He will not come back, and you would have lost an opportunity to counsel him what to do in future. Not only have you not done an HIV test for him, you have missed an opportunity to give him appropriate information so as to protect himself in future. So this is another group, but yet another challenge that we have to face. So what I have shown you are two different scenarios. So now, having laid this background, let us look at the challenges in managing adolescents with HIV infection. First and foremost, we have to realize we are dealing with two different populations, okay, and we will talk about both of them individually right now. First of all, we are talking about those children who are infected perinatally, or maybe in the early infancy, maybe through blood transfusion. So this group, once they reach adolescence, are likely to be in an advanced HIV stage because they've been infected for a long time, more likely to have opportunistic infections, more likely not to be on first line ART and in need of complex ART regimens because they've been receiving ART for a long time. As you are all aware, under the current guidelines, all children under 5 years of age are started on antiretroviral therapy. So by the time they reach adolescence, many of them might have actually failed on first line and gone on to require second line and so on. And this is the group where growth and development is likely to be affected. I am sure all of you who are dealing with HIV infected children, you would have seen that these children look much smaller as compared to their peers. This group is also likely to have a high mortality rate. An important issue is disclosure. How many of them may be knowing their HIV status? Disclosure of HIV is a very important issue and it assumes a lot of significance in adolescence. So they may or may not know their status. So in fact, some of them might be taking antiretroviral therapy and still not knowing why they are taking drugs. They are also likely to be having experience, they are also likely to have experienced multiple HIV related losses. So like the case that we saw, first case where the child had already lost his father and the mother was sick, and we in our own center we have a lot of AIDS orphans. So sometimes they have lost one parent, sometimes some of them have lost both parents. So they have seen adversities and they are also likely to have experienced stigma in life and relatively early in school, at home, and sometimes also in healthcare settings. Let us look at the other population that I am going to talk about. Here is a group of adolescents who have acquired HIV horizontally. That is, this is the group of children who is acquiring infection during adolescence. And what is the usual cause of acquiring HIV during adolescence? The commonest cause would be the heterosexual route. So this is the time when some of these children start assuming sexual activity, and of course most of them would not be aware of safe sexual practices. So a heterosexual transmission would assume increasing significance as the child grows older. Of course, apart from that, intravenous drug abuse, child sexual abuse would be other factors which would be important for horizontal acquisition of HIV infection during adolescence. So if you look at these three, heterosexual route, child abuse, heterosexual or even homosexual, child abuse and drug abuse, all of these are the key factors that would be responsible for HIV infection during adolescence. So if they get picked up now, they are very likely to be in early stages of HIV, and because they are likely to be in early stages of HIV, OIs are less likely, they are less likely to need ART. So they might have acquired infection, but very likely that their CD4 might still be okay. And if you remember, in this age group, the initiation of ART depends upon the CD4 count. And even if they do require antiretroviral therapy, they are likely to be on first line drugs. And by this time, since growth and development has already occurred, their growth and development is less likely to be affected. Mortality rates, of course, at this stage during adolescence are going to be much lower. And if this is a group that is accessing HIV services, they are already likely to know their status because they have come to us because they were tested because of their high risk behavior, which could have been voluntary testing, and they are likely to know their status. So disclosure is not an issue. However, like the first group, they are also likely to lack family, social and clinical support system. And partly because some of these children are likely to come from families with disrupted or decreased social support, which might be one of the factors responsible for their acquiring HIV infection, and they are having they're indulging in high risk behavior, and that might be one of the factors. And also they are likely to experience stigma later, and this stigma is also likely to be exacerbated by stigma related to drug abuse, sexuality, etc. So two totally different populations. And since these are different populations, let us look at the challenges of these two populations individually. Let us first talk about the bulk of our population, adolescent population, that is the perinatally infected adolescents. So this group of adolescents, the important challenges that we face in managing them are: 1. Poor physical growth, delayed development and impaired bone health. And it is important therefore to be monitoring the physical growth of these children, weight for age and height for age charts. It would be good if the medical officers at the ART center learn how to assess puberty, and in every child beyond 10 years do a pediatric assessment of pubertal development in boys and girls. How to assess puberty is beyond the domain of today's session, but if it's a felt need, this can always be done later on. So assessment of pubertal development, and they're also likely to be suffering from impaired bone health, and over time a lot of data has accumulated which shows that adolescents with HIV, due to multiple factors, are more prone to poor bone health. These children are also likely to be having delayed development, cognitive and memory impairment and a poor school performance. Again, many factors go into the reasons for their poor school performance: the disrupted family background itself, the various factors related to stigma, socioeconomic factors, not to mention the fact that these children, those with perinatal infection, are likely to have delayed development and are also likely to have memory and cognitive impairment. So all these factors contribute to a poor school performance in them. And this poor delayed development and cognitive impairment is likely to hamper their understanding of their situation and likely to hamper their own assuming control over their management of illness, which we expect adolescents to start doing. So that would be an important factor to keep in mind when we are handing over his own care to the adolescent himself. There are huge body image related issues, and because, as I said, these children tend to be short, they tend to look younger as compared to their peers, and some of the antiretroviral drugs, thankfully most of them we are not using now, are associated with lipodystrophy, and that can lead to, especially Stavudine was really bad, and children and some of our children who have now reached adolescence are likely to have received Stavudine, which has been phased out now, but a lot of them would have received Stavudine and they are likely to have lipodystrophy and body image related issues. And then this is the time when long-term morbidities of HIV infection also may become evident, whether it is CNS involvement or metabolic diseases like dyslipidemias and metabolic syndrome, cardiovascular disease, chronic inflammation, renal disease, bone disease. All these, it's a combined effect of HIV and the antiretroviral drug. So long-term morbidities may become obvious. A huge issue is disclosure of HIV status. So when do we do it? How do we do it? We've had one session on adolescent counseling and HIV disclosure last year, sometime in November, if I remember right, and that's a huge issue. And finally, transition from adult supervised care to self-led care. So all children management, the primary responsibility for treatment, for giving drugs, for coming to the ART center and taking care of their own health has been actually the adult driven. So parents or caregivers are responsible, but over time that responsibility has to shift from the adult supervised care to, and the adolescent himself has to learn about managing his own illness. So that itself becomes a challenge in view of especially the cognitive and memory impairment and delayed development. Therefore, insight of HIV infected adolescent into his own illness may not be as much as you might expect from his healthy peers. More challenges. These children are likely to be suffering, to be receiving ART for a long period, and this is the time when adherence faltering is especially noted. And the multiple factors that contribute towards adherence faltering in this age group. One is of course limited and ineffective family support. Remember, as the child is growing older, the parents are also getting older, and some of them might just succumb to their disease. Then these children, the prevalence of depression is very high in these children, and the multiple factors, and we have talked about some of them, whether it is poor body image or whether it is just understanding the impact of HIV, whether it is adverse socioeconomic circumstances, or whether it is stigma they are experiencing. So there are multiple factors for depression, and depression is very common in these children. Another important factor that contributes to adherence faltering is adherence fatigue. They've been taking drugs for a long time, and one day they just get sick and tired of it. Cognitive impairment that assumes importance because they're unable to take care of their own illness. And as I said, transitioning of healthcare responsibility from caregiver to adolescent. So all these factors put together are responsible for adherence faltering. So a child who has been doing very well so far and on his adherence front suddenly starts showing faltering, and this is a direct factor which is responsible for treatment failure. And again, because they have been on long duration of ART, treatment related side effects also assume importance, and they are likely to be on complex ART regimens, more likely to be, and once they start failing, they are likely to go on to more complex regimes with more side effects, and pill burden also might increase. So these are additional problems of perinatally infected adolescents. So let's look at the other group now, the horizontally infected adolescents. About this group, we have no information. We just do not know as of now how our adolescents, how many of them are indulging in unsafe practices, whether it is sexual practices or intravenous drug abuse, how and when are they acquiring infection, what is the relative proportion of children under each category of under each mode of transmission. It's actually, we just do not know much about this group, but this is a very vulnerable group. These are the children who have newly started experimenting, either be with drugs or with sexuality, and they need guidance. But many of them actually live on fringes of society, hiding their sexuality, occupation and gender not only from their friends but also from their peers and their families. And because there are legal restrictions including criminalization of drug use, sex work and consensual sex between males, and therefore this group actually tends to hide. They and because they're difficult to reach, they fear arrest and abuse on discovery of their behavior. So this group, which actually needs a lot of help, is the one which is totally out of reach. And typically they learn of their HIV status through healthcare providers, and the disclosure issues here are the reverse. So they indulge in unsafe practices. HIV testing might have been done on their own initiation, or maybe with the help of some NGOs who might have asked helped them get a HIV test done. Here the issue is how to disclose their status to their caregivers and family. So it's the reverse disclosure issue. How to get their family on board, because getting the family on board for HIV is just one, but getting them on board about the risky behavior that led to HIV is another important issue. So transgender youth, sexual misbehavior and sexually transmitted infections are other challenges of this group. So engagement in care and retention in care is actually a big challenge. So while the former group, we have management issues, with this group the problem is more basic. We have a challenge in engaging in care these children, and then finally retaining them in care. So what are the challenges of horizontally infected adolescents? Let's talk about, we've talked about some, let us look at the ART related challenges. One, there might be a delayed detection of infection. There is a low risk of suspicion of HIV in symptomatic adolescents. So we might actually never suspect a primary HIV infection, and routine sexual history is never taken when we look at adolescence, and so those aspects are actually never inquired for. As a routine, we don't talk about history of drug abuse or sexual history in adolescent. And then we lack adequate youth-friendly voluntary testing facilities for adolescents with high-risk behavior. And they might be very, very hesitant to come to an adult-centric center where, and they might feel actually very vulnerable and exposed coming to a VCTC center and asking for a HIV test. And there's a big, huge issue of legal age of consent for voluntary testing. And this is a problem because in our age, the legal age for consent for voluntary testing is 18 years. And a lot of our adolescents do become sexually active and maybe even indulge in other risky behavior before that age. So all these factors contribute to delayed detection of infection. And once infection is detected, there is poor linkage to the ART center and retention in HIV care, and this data exists. So even if you diagnose them and the VCTC center refers them to the ART center, the adolescents might not reach for all the reasons they have to tell their family. They might get overwhelmed, there is no support. So LFU is particularly high among adolescents between the time of diagnosis and starting ART. So ART never gets started. And then of course there are familial constraints around disclosure, and lack of emotional and financial support might be other reasons. So all these factors put together contribute to delayed diagnosis and delayed initiation of ART in this group. And there is some data that shows that many of these children might actually enter the care system of care with significant immune dysfunction. So a lot of them might already be having a moderate to severe immunodeficiency by the time they are picked up, and more worryingly, some of them might actually be entering with baseline resistance, especially to NNRTIs, and these children are also more likely to suffer from IRIS once the ART has been started on them. Even though both these groups, the perinatally infected one and the other group where HIV is acquired horizontally, have different challenges, there are a lot of areas which are common for both of them. And so both of them have this common issue of adjustment to diagnosis and coping. Really huge issue. Even though a perinatally infected adolescent might have been disclosed that he has HIV infection, say around the age of 10 to 11 years, to accept that diagnosis, to understand what it means is not a simple process. It takes years for a child for full implications of HIV infection to sink in. And of course, one where it's a horizontally acquired infection, it's a new infection anyway. So adjustment to diagnosis and coping are important issues in both group of adolescents. Adverse family and social environment are also likely to be a common factor for both groups. Deviant and aggressive behavior and mental stress tend to be common in both groups. Then of course there would be education related issues and what kind of career opportunities exist for them, what are the various avenues open for them in future. Safe sexual practices, issues related to relationships, issues related to marriage, pregnancy are again common for both of them. And this is the age group that is becoming ready for these challenges in life, and we as a system need to be able to support them through these. Unfortunately, most countries lack programs which are tailored to meet the specific requirements of adolescents with HIV. So these children are included by default in either the programs that are directed towards infected or affected children, or in the adult programs in general. So we don't really target this group with all its vulnerabilities and all its needs. We really don't have programs specifically tailored to meet their requirements. And this group needs help. There is some data and on high prevalence of unsafe sexual practices among adolescents with HIV, and this was a study only on perinatally infected adolescents. And in this particular cohort, 45% of the perinatally infected adolescents had been sexually active. Imagine nearly half of them, and they are perinatally infected and they're sexually active. And so you can think of the implications. And 43% of HIV positive youth did not use a condom during their last intercourse, and 25% admitted inconsistent condom use, and 40 to 60% continue to engage in unprotected sexual intercourse even after learning their HIV status, and 24% became pregnant before their 19th birthday. So you can imagine the implications of these, how vulnerable they are to infect others. And then if they become pregnant, then of course infect the child. So this is, and so this study was focusing only on perinatally infected adolescents. Data related to those with horizontal infection, as I said earlier, we hardly have any data on that group. Even that group is unlikely to be any better. So both these groups actually are a highly vulnerable group for unsafe sexual practices. Okay. So, having looked at the two populations and their challenges, what is it that we can do? First, let us see what exists, what is possible. First of all, we have free availability of antiretroviral drugs, and this the current regimes are very simple weight band based treatment regimes, and they are available free of cost throughout the country. So the treatment is available. The current treatment consists of a once daily combination pill, that is all. So pill burden is really not a problem. Once a child is free, adolescent is free of the opportunistic infections, once his CD4 count is okay, all that he requires is a one daily combination pill. It's a combination of 3 drugs, you all are aware. It is a combination of tenofovir, lamivudine and efavirenz that we give to these children. So very simple treatment available throughout the country, and this regime is highly efficacious, and the side adverse event profile is also very low. Next, a comprehensive management is available for the entire family under one roof. So if adolescent is perinatally infected, he comes to the same place where his parents are coming. So the entire family gets managed at one place. All of them can come together, collect the drugs together, they support each other in their adherence, and they attend counseling programs together. So there's a comprehensive management which is available. By now we have well defined management protocols for everything, for their follow up, for initiation of ART, for doing the CD4 counts, monitoring their adherence, watching out for comorbidities and treating comorbidities. The protocols are well defined and everything is available free of cost. And most importantly, there is continuity of care at ART centers, and this is a huge advantage that they continue to come to the same center where they came as a child, and even as an adult they continue to get the ART from the same center. And this is a problem that most pediatricians are now finding it very difficult to handle, especially those of us who are dealing with chronic disorders, say for example thalassemia major or children with endocrine disorders like diabetes. So once these children reach the age of 18 years, transitioning them from pediatric care to adult care is extremely difficult. It involves a change in team, and new team is a little reluctant to take on somebody who's been on therapy for so long, and these children feel very lost. Now that huge issue of transitionist care gets minimized because it's the same center where the family will continue to come there. And not only that, this also means that the staff is not only the same center, the staff is aware of their story, it's the same staff who has come to understand the child over this time and knows the peculiarities of that child, and this is a huge plus in the management of AL-HIV in our own settings right now. Where do we need to improve? First of all, very urgently, we need to make HIV testing easily available and more youth friendly. We should be able to create an environment which doesn't be able to come judgmental about them without anybody enforcing their own biases upon them and their own moral values upon them. Somebody who should be able to give them the needed care, give them the tests and give them appropriate counseling. We need more testing sites, and we absolutely need good structured youth education program regarding safe and sexual practices. Of course it is important to capture the youth who have got HIV infection, but what is critical is preventing HIV infection in this age group, and therefore youth education, whether be it in school or through clinics like Suraksha clinics and other similar services which the government is running, like adolescent reproductive and sexual health program. There are so many programs the government is running. We should be able to educate our youth regarding safe sexual practices, and that is really needed. We do need respectful, accepting, friendly, understanding and supportive providers. And of course, the burning issue is issue related to age of testing. It's a very difficult issue around which there are no easy answers. We cannot test before 18 years of age, and what is paradoxical is in our own country the age of consent for voluntary sex is 16 years. So age for consent for voluntary sex is 16, but age of consent for HIV testing is 18. There are discrepancies in our own system. Fortunately, NACO is aware of, and there is an active movement in NACO to try and bring down the age of consent for HIV testing, but till that happens, it's a law that needs to be changed. It is a challenge which we all have to face, and there are no choices around that, and one just has to choose between complying with the law and testing an underage adolescent and facing the possible consequences of either choice. So there are issues and no easy answers around that. So, but just wanted to tell you that New York State under the 2010 amended HIV testing law offers now HIV testing as a routine part of medical care to all persons aged 13 to 64. It is now considered a standard of care and mandated by law in New York. So you offer HIV testing to everybody in the age of 13 to 64. So there is, and this is something like a opt-out approach that we have been following in pregnancy, and this is really huge, and this is where we should be heading over time if we are really going to make our youth feel less hesitant and come forward for their testing. Ongoing support and counseling are extremely important, and understand that the understanding of adolescent changes rapidly with age. As they grow physically, their mental capacity really enormously changes. Therefore, full implications of being HIV positive are slow to understand. You might tell a 10-year-old or a 11-year-old that you are HIV infected. He might be able to name his disease, but what does it mean to be HIV positive? What does it mean to live with a chronic disease? Taking chronic medication, how is it going to impact upon his future, on his education, on maybe the sports, maybe his career, maybe his family life? It's difficult to understand. And over time, as and when the issues come, or as the child realizes them, he needs to, he's going to need support and appropriate counseling at every step. So what is important is to build rapport, keep the communication channels open, and be at pace with his or her intellectual development. And every child is going to have a different intellectual development. Two 15-year-olds are not likely to be same. They may come from different circumstances, different background, their own understandings may be different. So a counselor and a medical officer has this huge challenge of understanding what that person's intellectual development is and talking to him in a language that he can understand. And that's a challenge that all medical officers at ART Center would have to face. And what is equally critical is not only to engage the adolescent, but also to engage, counsel and support the caregivers who are supporting the adolescent, because family support is critical. So the caregivers themselves might have many biases. They might have many doubts about the child's own future, the efficacy of drugs, his own career, and so many things, and we need to be taking the caregivers along. So the key counseling issues are information about HIV infection and AIDS, role of medication, importance of adherence to drug and regular follow-up. So all these things which actually are perinatally, once you have a child with perinatal HIV infection, which are explained to the family, now need to be explained to the adolescent. He is going to require a support for disclosure, and remember, disclosure is not only the disclosure of their own HIV status to them. So telling them that they have HIV infection. The next step that follows is disclosure of parental HIV status. And third, disclosure of their HIV status to others, to the extended family, to the school, to his friends. So these are all the issues where we are going to support them. So they need to be told, especially about disclosing their status to others, the potential benefits and risks of disclosure of their HIV status to others, and empowering and supporting the adolescent to determine whether to disclose to others, and if yes, then when to disclose, how to disclose, and to whom to disclose. So all these issues they are going to be needing counseling. And finally, how do they live with this chronic disease which is with them for life? These are chronic issues. What is important is that the programs and services for adolescents living with HIV, they should be inclusive of different needs of both group of adolescents, and we do not create divisions between the two groups. So once they come to us as adolescents with HIV, it doesn't matter whether it is perinatal infection or horizontally acquired. We did mention that a lot of issues are common. So let us have a program that is inclusive of needs of both. And these are the living with HIV issues that we need to be testing them. Nutrition, hygiene, ensuring good drug adherence and regular follow-up, developing relationships, safe sexual practices, dealing with stigma and discrimination, educational opportunities and career-related counseling, dealing with parental HIV status, sickness and death. And of course, in today's session, it is totally beyond the scope of today's session to be dealing with them. So all that I'm going to do is just telling that these are big issues, and there are now structured programs which a lot of countries are building to cover all these topics slowly in group counseling, some group, some individual counseling, and all these issues need to be tackled with them. And it's the ART center staff that is responsible, maybe with the help of other organizations like NGOs, to be able to deliver care in all these fields. So if we have to do all this, we need to strengthen our medical officers and counselors, and we need to train them in all aspects of medical management and counseling. We need to train our medical officers in assessing and interpretation of growth and pubertal development. They should be able to detect drug toxicities and treatment failure, so that timely change of therapy is done. Because if we delay picking up treatment failure, that increases morbidity, may cause more growth faltering and more infections. And they also need training in counseling adolescents. We also need to counsel parents about dealing with adolescents. As we talked about in the beginning of this session, adolescents as a group are difficult to deal with, and by the parents, and parents sometimes cannot handle them. An adolescent who has a chronic infection like HIV becomes even more difficult to deal with, and there will be counseling issues. There will be time when parents just throw up their hands and feel that we are not able to deal with this child. Either he's so depressed that he is not talking, he's shut everybody out, or it's the other way around, he's become so aggressive and violent that every day there are complaints coming about the child's behavior from the school or maybe the peers. So counseling parents about dealing with such an adolescent needs to be done. The problem that we face, there is a rapid turnover of staff, so there is a poor continuity of care. So not only for these patients who have chronic infection, it is good if there is a continuity of care provided by the same physician and the same counselor. Once the medical officer and the counselor changes, that continuity of care is broken, and that relationship needs to be developed all over again. Not only that, all the the training of doctors and counselors, whatever skills they have acquired, one needs to begin with the training all over again, and that's a challenge in the system where most of the staff at the ART centers is a contractual staff. So there is a rapid turnover of staff. And finally, there is also another area that needs strengthening is development of support groups with representation from everybody: pediatricians, psychologists, counselors, career counselors, and PL-HIV themselves. So if there are support groups, and there are support groups existing for many chronic illnesses, so if there are support groups, so those groups can take care of a lot of these issues. A structured counseling training can be given through these support groups. So this is the need of the time to develop support groups. So we need to be able to develop peer support services. Mental health, sexual and reproductive health services have to be made accessible to this group. Sexuality education specific for the needs of AL-HIV. Addressing anxiety, fear and complex emotions through counseling. So these patients go through a gamut of emotions. Once they know about their diagnosis, there are emotions around that. Once they experience stigma, once they experience parental losses, once they experience socioeconomic stressors, there are problems. So you do need education, sexuality education around these, and peer support role model programs are needed. Age appropriate livelihood opportunities would have to be they have to be guided towards these, and adolescent enabling adolescent leadership participation. It is good to recognize among your own patients who are the ones who have got a grip over their disease, who are the ones who can be groomed into being a leader of the group. So these are the people who can be selected to be part of support groups. So one should actually empower these adolescents to participate actively in their own care and helping others. So I think that is all for today, and before I close, I can just bring out the key messages. The adolescent with HIV are a newly emerging population that we as a system need to learn how to optimally deal with. And there are two cohorts of HIV infected youth. One is the perinatally infected versus those with a sexually acquired infection. There are multiple challenges when managing HIV infected youth. Ongoing sexual risk behavior and maintaining consistent adherence to medication are two important issues. A combination of optimal medical health services and social support are needed to address these challenges. And of course, a pediatrician and I would say a ART center medical officer. A pediatrician has a key role in preventing HIV infection, suspecting infection and referring those for testing, whereas a medical officer at the ART center has this huge responsibility of planning not only the follow-up care of this child, but also looking at the complex issues around disclosure, adherence, etc. So that is all, and thank you.
Thank you so much, madam, for the valuable session. I hope all the participants enjoyed this NDLS. And then I request all the participants to kindly enter their feedback on the e-poll, which is displayed on the screen. Once again, I'm requesting all the participants to kindly give your feedbacks on the e-poll, which is displayed on the screen. Your feedbacks will improve our quality of NDLS as well. So again, I'm requesting all the participants to kindly give the feedback on the e-poll.